Hi, welcome to Constitutional Chats, hosted by me, Janine Turner,
and Kathy Gillespie,
with students
Dakari Chapman
and me, Tova Kaplan.
Join us as we discuss hot topic issues with constitutional experts. It's sponsored by Constituting America.
My name's Janine Turner. I'm founder and co-president of Constituting America. Come on in. We're thrilled you're with us today, and this fabulous group of co-hosts, as well as our fabulous constitutional expert scholar, Professor Gordon Lloyd, backed by popular demand. And today we're going to talk about the role of the executive and Old Whig 5 versus Federalist 71. Isn't this a fabulous study? Please spread the word. All right. So I'm going to introduce the panel. Well, we have a little, you know what? I'll toss it. Well, okay. We have a little, we just want to know with whom we're speaking. So let us know if you're an elementary school student or high school, college. That way, Professor Gordon Lloyd knows how to direct his fabulous dissertation. To what age group? You can scroll up and down and let us know a little bit about who you are. And I'll take this time because she's going to be speaking to us next to introduce Aubrey. Aubrey is our director of media director, and she's responsible for all of this fabulous technology. And she is this year's our Constituting America We the Futures contest winner. Yay for Best STEM. She's born and raised in Utah, the middle of 7 children. She's a student at Brigham Young University and aspires to be an athletic coach. And I don't know if y'all been watching the Olympics, but you can see how incredibly vital coaches are. And I've always said Aubrey will be a great one because she has just a very contagious smile, and she's going to make everybody feel like they can win. So Aubrey, say hello and tell us about our audience today.
Thank you for that, Janine. Yeah, I have been watching the Olympics. It's been really fun to watch them and just how influential coaches are. Really quick, I'll just share these poll results. So the largest group we have to get with us today are friends, and we have 29% of you. Then there's 21% of parents and grandparents with children. And then there's another 21% of fans. And then we have 14% donors, and then 7% family, and then a 4% middle and high school students. So we're just glad that each and every one of you are here today.
Awesome. Yes. And thanks for letting us know a little bit about you. We would love to introduce and have you all come on, but then this one, instead of being an hour, would be about 6 hours. Okay. Now I'm going to introduce Kathy Gillespie, the oh so fabulous Kathy Gillespie, co-president of Constituting America, with whom none of this would be happening. I always say it's like an eagle. It takes 2 wings to fly. 2 wings to fly. And if it were out without Kathy, I'd just be flapping around and we wouldn't be getting off the ground. So Kathy, hello. Okay, Kathy was the chief of staff on the Hill forever and ever and ever, sort of being a part of the American experience, running our Congress. Knowing Kathy, she wasn't just the CEO for one congressman, she was keeping the House alive. And also she's one of the 16 private citizens that's been selected to help celebrate our semi-quincentennial 250th birthday of America. She's putting together all those programs. So Kathy, say hello, and you're going to talk about our fabulous sponsor, someone who's near and dear to your heart.
Well, thank you, Janine, and thank you for all you do for Constituting America. It is so much fun to get to work with you every day to promote the United States Constitution. Thank you for your leadership. I want to thank our sponsor for today is my dad, Don Hay, and he has been just a very loyal Constituting America Constitutional Chats listener and participant, and has been a sponsor now several times of our programs, and just always supports me and everything that I do. And so, Dad, thank you so much for sponsoring our Constitutional Chats today and for all you do to make Constituting America's programs possible. We really, really, I love you and we appreciate you. So thank you.
Yay, absolutely. Big round of applause, Mr. Hay. Thank you very, very much. And, thank you for this fabulous daughter that you raised. Where would we be without Kathy? Okay, next I'm going to introduce Tova Love Kaplan, who's looking very summery today. Very pretty. Look at her. She'll have to tell us where she is. Maybe, hopefully she's vacationing someplace fun. Tova Love Kaplan, you need to study this space because you're going to see her as Secretary of State or ambassador to the UN or president, whatever she wants to accomplish, even if she wants to be the president. Tova will accomplish it. Let me tell you. We've known Tova for about 4 years now or more. She's won our We the Future contest 3 times. Left brain, right brain, creativity, PSA, as well as STEM and marketing plan when she was in 8th grade. How many 8th graders create marketing plans? Just saying. And she lives in Illinois, and she's the director of our National Youth Board. And we're thrilled the way she runs that, like a CEO of a top 100 company. And she's passionate, about inspiring young people to know and use their constitutional rights. Yes, ma'am. Hello, Tova Love Kaplan. How are you? Where are you?
I'm great, and I am currently staying with my friend in New Hampshire, so getting out of the city, but making sure to have time to be on the call because, I always have the best time every week, and I look forward to it so much. So thank you for having me on, and can't wait for today's show.
Well, thank you, Tova, for taking time out of your vacation. And when you get to college and take a constitutional course, you're just going to you could just teach it. You're going to be correcting your teacher. Actually, that's not quite right. Right? Because you have so much knowledge. We're thrilled. Thank you, Tova. All right, the extraordinary Jewel and Jorn Gilbert, ladies and gentlemen. Drum roll, please. I want to know how their play. They have this fabulous company, and they just put on SpongeBob. So we're going to have to hear how that experience was. Jewel Gilbert is executive producer, and Jorn Gilbert is operations director of Sing for America, a family-based company that the brothers co-founded. Entrepreneurs they are. Sing for America seeks to show the art of truth and light through their performance. Yes, and I know they do that. And we are proud of them because they are both We the Future contest winners. Yeehaw. Best speech was Jewel's first, and Jordan did an exceptional PSA that we're currently promoting right now. Sing for America is an actor-run theater company which specializes in semi-professional musicals, private training in the arts, school drama solutions, which we realize is when the school needs solutions, they help them with solutions with their drama department, and public entertainment events, all while revealing a colorblind world on stage. Jewel and Jordan are graduates of Moravian College, where they earned a BA in musical performance and dramatic production. So cool. All right, Jewel and Jordan, watch the two. They're going to be clutching Oscars or Tonys someday. I just know it. Say hello, Jewel and Jordan.
Hello, everyone. Great to be here once again. Happy to be working with Professor Lloyd again. He's always very insightful to all of our questions.
SpongeBob went awesome. We had finally real people in the audience, and they bought tickets, and we got to have posters, and it was just a great experience to have back again after so long of not having it. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine what that's like for a year and a half of not being able to do it, and then finally getting to do it again. So it's starting back. And then if everybody out there and all of you would say some prayers, we were trying to buy our first building, so to have a more permanent home for the company. So that process has started, and now all we need is some things to fall right. So it's in God's hands.
Well, we will be praying for that. And I think that's very exciting to have your own theater. Congratulations on that. Congratulations for launching and successfully producing SpongeBob.
Thank you.
SpongeBob,
Yeah, I was
right.
Yes, I was Squidward, and I have his voice just running in my head still. So it's it is funny. And it was a pertinent time to do it too, because of everything going on.
Yeah, and then Dustin Hoffman was always thought in Rain Man, when he won the Academy Award for Rain Man, he kind of, kept a lot of that vocal and tone afterwards. I thought it was really kind of interesting. Okay, moving on, because we are here to talk about the Federalists and the Anti-Federalist. Are you ready? Drum roll, please. for one of my favorite people on the planet. Our special guest, back by popular demand, is Professor, actually a doctor too, but Professor Gordon Lloyd. Look at him. Look at that photo. Professor Gordon Lloyd is a professor and is the Robert and Catherine Doxson Professor of Public Policy at Pepperdine University, my alum. He is the co-author of 3 books on the American founding. As he was just telling us, he's writing even more. And sole author of a book on the political economy of the New Deal. Ooh, that'd be good. And he is the creator, with the help of the Ashbrook Center, of 4 highly regarded websites on the origin of the Constitution. Fabulous. Professor Lloyd earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in economics and political science at McGill University. He completed all the coursework toward a doctorate in economics at the University of Chicago before receiving his Master's of Arts and PhDs in government at Claremont Graduate School. Professor Lloyd is a frequent contributor to Constituting America's 90-Day Studies. Yes, going way back, I believe, to 2010. And we are grateful that he is helping us structure this very important study that we've been wanting to do for a long time, the Anti-Federalists, and how relevant the Anti-Federalists, who of course were fighting against the Federalist Publius with the Constitution, and to kind of weigh that in today's eyes. Professor Lloyd has helped us break this series into 13 episodes, which we are now doing currently. So we're thrilled that Professor Gordon Lloyd is here, and I think there are his books. And looky here, I have one of them right here in my hand. All right, Professor Gordon Lloyd, you're on. And for those that are visiting us today, if you have questions, want to type in something, we will get to that. And we are going to hear all about this, what is it called again? An Old Whig 5. Tell us about Old Whig 5, Professor Gordon Lloyd.
Well, Old 5 means it's the 5th of set of letters that he's written to newspapers, which newspapers and pamphlets were part of the debate over whether to ratify the Constitution or not. So this is his 5th letter. An Old Whig is a pseudonym, and many people in those days used pseudonyms of one kind or another. You will find a lot of Roman names like Publius, who's writing the Federalist Papers, the savior of Rome. And the Old Whig title is grounded in the idea that something has happened to Whiggism. Whiggism basically meant anti-Tory, anti-monarchy. And so that's what a Whig was. And that was what the American revolutionaries were. But then a debate took place as to what kind of Whig are we between 1776, 1787, namely, what are we going to do about the state governments that have been working between 1776 and 1787? And what are we going to do about the Articles of Confederation? So an Old Whig wants to stay with the established state constitutions, which are and the states which are in dominant position with a weakish union. And then the new Whigs think that what we need is to restructure the union to have a more perfect union than what we have. And that would mean some loss in state power, to be sure. And it would also mean a restructuring of the branches of government. As far as an Old Whig is concerned, monarchy is the problem, right? Monarchy is the opposite of Whiggism. So you will see in this article that he's written, he starts off talking about the right of conscience and the Bill of Rights. You wonder, what has this got to do with the debate over the executive? This is Bill of Rights stuff. Well, correct, it is Bill of Rights stuff. But why is it Bill of Rights stuff? Because the Old Whig thinks that the key to the revolution was to secure liberty, and liberty can be placed in terms of these rights which have been inherited, due process rights, and rights which are natural or inherent, particularly the right to conscience. And his point is, where are those rights in danger? And it says, from the monarchy. So that's how the Old Whig gets into the rights of conscience. And then he turns and says, well, could we have a monarchy in the United States under this new constitution? And his point is, not everybody's going to be George Washington. Everybody knew at that time George Washington would become president. and George Washington is not going to become a monarch. And but what happens after George Washington? Are there any real checks on the presidency in this Constitution that won't put our rights in danger? And so that's the perspective from which the old Whig is coming. Toryism in the form of monarchy and now in the form of a presidency run away to become a monarch is the danger. So there are really two parts to this essay: stating the rights, particularly rights of conscience, and then secondly, where are these rights going to be in danger under this new government? And he's focusing now on the presidency, but other people, including the old Whig, will pursue that theme with regard to the Senate, with regard to the judiciary. So all the power, the restructuring of the powers of the new government are going to possess a danger because they deviate from what is known and what they felt comfortable with. Hamilton, it's just a little quirk here. All the essays from 64 to the end, which is 85, all of that, whole bunch written by Hamilton, not by Madison. And the reason being, number 63 is Madison's last essay. And why? Because he has to leave New York. Madison is in New York because he's representing Virginia in the existing government, which is still working, the Confederation Congress, and they're in Philadelphia trying to alter that government and then defend the alteration. So Madison is there in the new government, in the old government, and creating a new government and so you can write with Hamilton. But Patrick Henry back in Virginia manages to pass a law which says you cannot run for the Virginia ratifying convention unless you are a resident at the time. So Madison has to rush from New York to get back to Virginia to register in time to defend the Constitution against a whole bunch of people in Virginia. And so there's a quirk there. So what is happening is Hamilton writes all the essays dealing with the presidency and all the essays dealing with the judiciary. And to find out Madison's point of view, you have to kind of wait until you get to the Virginia ratifying convention and also in the first Congress. And he has a huge argument. It's a Pacific, they'll just debate in the 1790s over the powers of the executive with George Washington. Hamilton takes one side, Madison takes the other. But so what I'm trying to say is the context here is that Hamilton, as Brutus, is writing all these presidency articles. And what he's trying to suggest is, let me put it this way, he wants good government. What old Whig wants is free government. And the question is, can you have free government and good government? And must one give way to the other? And Whig is saying, the more you strengthen the central government, the more you put liberties in danger. That is his two-part for that essay. Hamilton's point is, liberty is in danger unless you have good government. And the only way to have good government is by having a strong executive. So his essays are defending why a strong executive is consistent with liberty. And so the dangers which the old Whig is raising, Hamilton is responding to and saying that there are elections. There's a great difference. See, the old Whig is part of a crowd that thinks the key to understanding monarchy is length of time in office. And they just inherit the office and they stay there forever. And Hamilton is saying, well, I'll tell you what is different about the presidency. The presidency doesn't inherit the office. The president is elected every 4 years. So it can't be monarchy. So get your eyes off the monarchy being how long it is and seeing that monarchy is a form of government which is where you inherit it and the people have no consent. So Hamilton's point is we have consent, we have elections. So now we have, that's the check, old Whig, that's the check. So now we can build up the strength of the executive. So how do we build up the strength of the executive? And the answer is to have one executive, because people are talking about having multiple. have one executive, the buck stops here, as Harry Truman said, and have duration in office. So the House is there for 2 years, right? But the presidency is in there for 4. And Hamilton's argument is that you have to interest the person with the office. So this is part of the opposite and rival interest. How can somebody leave whatever job they're doing and come to the presidency and only be there for 1 year or 2 years? 4 years is an attractive offer for somebody. A 4-year contract is a decent offer. Hamilton will like it for life, as long as there's elections. See, other people argued for 12 years. The best that Hamilton could get at the convention was 4 years with election. But what happens if something bad happens in those 4 years? We have impeachment or recall. So that is the argument. Old Whig wants free government, liberties. Here are our liberties. Where the liberties come from? Strong executives, strong on the road to monarchy. Hamilton, we need a strong executive, and it's not on the road to monarchy because we have elections. And we gain the strength of an executive without losing our liberties. And that's the argument.
Okay, so thank you. I mentioned this 12 years. Hamilton wanted the president to be in office for 12 years originally. Even
for life. It is his original plan. And that's where he was accused of being pro-monarchy. And Hamilton afterwards explained himself, no, monarchy is not how long you're in office. Monarchy is how you get into office. And monarchy is actually, like Charles will inherit the kingdom of king monarchy in Britain. It's not because he is brilliant or anything, or whatever. It's because he's the firstborn. I mean, Hamilton was saying that's pure luck. That's pure chance. That's what you need to. That's the danger of monarchy. Is you may just inherit it. I have a solution to that problem, and that is elections. So let's turn away from the fear of length of office and look upon length of office as a plus for us once we know we have elections.
Okay, so he thought it could be for life,
yes.
But you impeach the president. First of all, you're electing the president. Secondly, you can be the president. But then he went from life to 12 years. Is that his second thought?
Well, I mean, the negotiations took place in the Constitutional Convention as to how long. And Hamilton's point is, once elected, then they could serve forever because we have removed the problem. And others weren't satisfied because they looked upon duration in office as not just elections, but duration in office was a very important protection for liberty. So that's why, I mean, if you look at the state constitutions, for example, the legislatures were elected for 1 year. And the governor was only for 1 year, and elected by the legislature in all of the states except 2. So the part of the post-colonial response to the idea of creating constitutions in the state levels to produce a weak executive because they favored monarchy. By the time you get to these new Whigs, like Hamilton and Madison, they're looking to get the strength, the benefits of monarchy without inheriting the defects of monarchy. And the defects of monarchy can be solved by elections.
And so how did they, who was the it's so interesting because you know so much about the inside negotiations. Who brought up 4 years?
It emerged in one of the plans, so it's hard to say which individual delegate, but it emerged from a conversation on one of the committees that were proposing length of proposing the Constitution. So 12 years did come up, 8 years came up, and Hamilton just threw it out there and said, now you debate it, because Hamilton really threw it out and said, do you believe in elections? Yes, well, believe in elections then.
Yeah, I could see that.
So
I could see
Hamilton
that.
is thinking of getting away with long terms. You've got 12 years. Hamilton will be happy with 12 years.
Right.
Madison would prefer 8 years. And then and then the question becomes, is the president, can the president be re-eligible for office? Can the president be elected again? And people like the old Whig would lean to say no, because because if they go again, they're going to get closer and closer and love the office and not love you. Right? And Hamilton says, that's exactly what I want. I want them to love the office, because then they will defend the office. And it's only by making the office holders interested in the office. So for example, today, if somebody asked me, what should they do? What can we do about the way Congress works? I say, members of Congress now are not really believing in that they're senators or members of the House. They're members of a party, or they're such and such. But they need to act like they're senators and love the office. Instead, we're seeing from both parties the Senate being used as a stepping stone to becoming president. And so
with some of them, that's really true. Well, I think what's fascinating about this is to see how the debate back then found a very productive center. The debate left and right was able to bring about reason and something that was reasonable, that incorporated a little bit of what the old Whigs and a little bit of what the new Whigs believed. And I think personally is what we're lacking today. You know, we need more of this coming together of two sides of an argument, or two sides of the debate, and finding a center. And that's
very good point. So that Washington was the person who held the center. I mean, he kept the center by deliberately not running for a third term. Washington could have got a third term, but he deliberately only did 2 terms. So Washington himself, while a new Whig, listened to the concerns. And this is why the center was holding, because people were listening to each other. Even though they may have voted against each other, they listened, and that experience. And Washington's point was 2-year terms, 2 terms for the presidency, and oblige yourself as a matter of character, a love of what it means to hold the center, to say, I'm not going to be tempted to hold 3 terms. And look what happened. Roosevelt was the only president to do 4 terms. And what was the reaction? An amendment to the Constitution which limited the presidency to 2 terms. And that required both Republicans and Democrats, because they weren't to pass an amendment. One party cannot pass an amendment in this country. You've got to have a center. You've got to have a lot. So this whole idea of the old Whig of limiting terms, limiting the duration, which Hamilton really wanted, you'd love it to see it go up, held in America with the amendment to the Constitution. So what Washington did automatically now required an amendment by the people who choose to limit the presidency to 2 terms.
And then they had to through the states. Well, I want to toss this to Tova. My last comment in this at this point would just be that you know, it would be interesting if we created term limits. So Hamilton would say, don't need them. But if we were to create term limits for the House and the Senate, because in that respect, they wouldn't constantly be thinking about the next election. At some point, our House and Senate today, our representatives and senators are just so busy thinking about that next election that they're not actually thinking about what's best right now for the country, because they're always clicking around thinking, how am I going to hold power? How am I going to get reelected? And if we can get it,
I'm going to be Hamilton.
Okay.
You've just given me, Janine, the argument for long terms in office. Because if all they're interested in is re-election, that means the terms are too short, because they can't be interested in their office, because what they're interested is being elected. So thank you, Janine, for making my case for having 4-year terms for the House, 9-year terms for the Senate, and life for the presidency.
So you can look at it both ways, as long as you can impeach, I guess.
That's exactly, and that's the old Whig's point, is that What if they do wrong? What if they do wrong in these 4 years? And Hamilton would say the likelihood of them doing wrong is a bit much. But never mind, we'll have impeachment for
I find one of the things that keeps us going as a country, and Tova, I'm tossing this to you after, that keeps us going as a country. One of our winners said this in actually the, I don't think it made it into the video, but Tova was actually in this video about how to have a civic conversation. And one of our winners from Chicago, Nicole, she said that we can live with a president we hate because we know in 4 years it's going to change. Correct. And I think that's what gives people hope and the ability to accept a president with whom they radically disagree, is they know that it's not going to be life, or it's going to, there was kind of a hard impeachment process that they know a turnover is happening. Okay, Tova, I'm going to go to you. Your turn.
Thank you. This is fascinating as always. I was wondering, talking about the ideas of the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists, what is the role of the citizen, the American citizen, under both conceptions of American government, and what are the differences between the two?
I think both Hamilton and the old Whig would assume that the citizenry would have an abiding interest in what is going on in their country, that they would have a civic personality to them. And that means at least at a minimum, reading newspapers, which are there tons of newspapers, pamphlets, exchanging letters to the editor, that kind of civic participation. Of course, people had the right to petition for grievances. So they would go ahead and exercise that right, but keep a vibrant debate alive. I think both sides would argue. I think Hamilton would argue that you don't need as much as if you can't get a fully vibrant citizenry, then all things are not lost. You can have good people in office, and you can have good people in office because they get interested in the office and they want to leave a legacy in the office. So in addition to good citizenry in the form of the public keeping themselves informed through newspapers and op-eds and town hall meetings, you need executives who are elected, who persuade the people that they're good, and then will act in good faith, because there's always impeachment around the corner. There's always another election around the corner. So I think Hamilton would actually put more interest in developing good leadership, whereas I think old Whig would place a lot more emphasis on good citizenship in the sense of the people always need to be alert, because those in power will always want to control power, and at whose expense will it be? The citizens. So I think you have two views of citizen responsibility. The old Whig, which is always informed, always be a good citizen in the sense of you know what's going on. Hamilton, try to attract good citizens who, instead of going into farming or going into whatever it is, will look upon holding the office of the president, and particularly holding the office of a senator. To be a senator, man, that is really something. To be a senator of in a new republic. Wow, that would attract what Hamilton would call so the better, those people who are really interested in the job and love the job, love being into politics.
Great, thank you. That's really interesting, though, those differences. And then earlier in your opening statement, you were talking about a right to conscience. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what that is?
The right to conscience means to be able to worship God as you see fit, without obviously demeaning or diminishing the right of other people. I mean, if you ask not just the old Whig, but if you ask Jefferson, who was really an old Whig in many senses, but he grew into becoming like a new Whig, and Madison, who is part of the new Whig crowd. If you ask Jefferson and Madison on the one hand, and the old Whig on the other. Tell me your three most important rights which this republic is supposed to secure, like in the preamble, to secure the blessings of liberty. What are the three biggies? The three biggies would be the right to conscience, that is the right to worship God as you see fit. Secondly, the right to a free press slash free speech, which shows how you can get civic. And the third one, both of those are very American contributions to the Constitution and rights. The third one is a traditional one inherited from Britain, which is due process of law. So you have right to jury trial, right to counsel. All of those are not natural rights in the sense of I can worship God as I see fit, but rather are inherited rights. So I think those are the three big rights. And right to conscience means, and look at it, why is that first? I think it means because you have property over your own mind. You have property over how you want to worship the natural order of things. And he felt that the right to conscience was not operating under the old regime of King George, because there was an established church, and those who disagreed with the established church had to come to America. A bunch of dissenters came to America. And so these dissenters were very interested in the government not controlling the right to conscience. So that was a religious right. And then the right to free speech and free press is a part of citizenship. And the due process rights is the rule of law in criminal law. And there's another right which is not there, but which is assumed, is the right of the people to choose the form of government under which they shall live. And the difference between the first Congress petitioned the king to behave himself. The second Congress declared independence. Independence from what? The right, the king saying whatever happens. And so the second Congress established the right to choose the form of government. And notice, none of the states chose monarchy. And what the old Whig is concerned about is if you have a strong executive, Hamilton, you might be on the road to monarchy. And Hamilton saying, in effect, this is the 1780s, not the 1770s.
Tova, do you have another question?
Sure. So with regards to the Federalist Papers, as we all know, those are written by Hamilton, Madison, and Jay. And I was wondering how each of them conceived of federalism differently. Like, was there differences in the ways they wrote about federalism and the perspectives they came at it through? Or were they all kind of in agreement with the arguments they put forth?
Well, I think in there are nuances of differences, and a lot of those differences came out later on, not that much later on, it came later on in the 1790s. But I think basically there are two ways to understand federalism. One is, what is your disposition towards strengthening the union? If your disposition was towards strengthening the union, you got a name which was called, you want to federalize. So you became a federalist in name because you were attached to a strong union. The Anti-Federalists didn't call themselves Anti-Federalists. That name was bestowed on them by say Hamilton, Madison, and Jay. They would like to be considered as small Republicans, small community Republicans. So their understanding of federalism was old-fashioned federalism, which meant localism. So what you're having now emerge is two different understandings of federalism. One is strengthening the union, and the other one is keeping things as they were with strength in the local communities. And if you look at Madison, Hamilton, and Jay in the Federalist Papers, all three of them are interested in strengthening the union. That is, in one sense, the Federalist Papers should have been called the Nationalist Papers. But they weren't, because the Federalist Papers got its name from those who wanted to strengthen the Union rather than the structural definition of what federalism is. And that has always remained a problem in America. Do we call it the federal government? Do we call it the national government? Do we call it the general government? And so there are features in the Constitution and the government which contain old-fashioned federalism, state-based, and new-fashioned federalism. You might call it like the old Whig and the new Whig. You might call it old Federalists and new Federalists.
It's interesting that you would say that, and I want to toss it to Jewel and Jordan, because we had a guest on once, because we always talk about the federal government, meaning the national, the big government, the DC government. And he says, no, federalism actually means states. And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm really confused. And so what you said is true. Some people think federal, the national, so I guess it's better to call really, if you're going to be exactly right, you would say that the government we see is the national government, and that because federalism really incorporates more power to the states. But I want to give it to Jewel and Jordan because they have their 10 minutes here. Go ahead, Jewel and Jordan.
The old Whig paper was interesting at the beginning with that pretty compelling, quick defense of needing a Bill of Rights.
Yes.
I thought that was an interesting way that he had decided to start it, because it makes us understand, I think, his philosophy and the rest of what he's going to write.
Absolutely correct. And that ties into what I was saying, is that the old Whig is, if you're asking what is a constitution supposed to do? And what is the structure, the legislature supposed to do? It's supposed to secure the blessings of liberty. So what we're talking about is looking at securing rights. That is the number one priority. And if you take a look at between 1776 and 1780, when the state constitutions were created, because there's revolution there. The right to revolution is not only a right to end ties with Britain, it is a right to form your own form of government. And so they have 13 states now forming their own government. And most of them started off with a statement of the Bill of Rights. This is what we're up to. This is what our job is to secure rights. And then here's how we're going to secure rights. Legislature, executive, weak executive, because the executive is the danger to securing rights. And then through the experience of the 1780s, Hamilton and Madison and Jay are saying a weak executive is in fact the problem. Old Whig, but if you strengthen the executive, you make rights insecure. And Hamilton and Jay and Madison are going to try to argue, no, we can have it both ways. We can secure rights and have a stronger executive. And Brian says,
and I think it's interesting as we sit now, because the old Whig was definitely right, but in a way, I wonder if the new Whig was also right, because I don't know if we can say that the executive branch has violated more rights than the other branches. And I wonder if that concern of the executive and paralleling the executive branch to a monarchy, paralleling the executive branch to having too much power, it of course has happened. The executive branch has overstepped compared to what the Constitution had been designed to do, or what the founding fathers had thought the right place of the executive branch was, but so have the judicial and legislative. So in light of that, then what do we make of the argument?
Well, the argument is that if the executive is overstepping, the check and balance is that the senators should act like senators, and the judges should act like judges, and the House should act like members of Congress, and stand up and be interested in their positions, and say, hey, you're trampling on us, on what we are used to. And what has happened is the Congress members of Congress don't seem to be particularly interested in being members of Congress. They're particularly interested in blaming the executive or blaming the judiciary. And so they're not standing up. They're not members of Congress. This whole system requires that senators act like senators. And that if an executive starts crossing boundaries, the Senate will say, no, we're not going to fund you. No, we're going to hold up your appointments. We're going to hold up your budget. See, this is very, very good. Hamilton's response to say you acting like the old Whig. Hamilton's response to you is, we have 4-year elections. And you say, that's not enough. Much damage can be done in 4 years. So Hamilton will come back and say, well, the executive can't operate without having a bunch of executive assistants around him. And who gets to appoint those people? The answer is the Senate. So what's the problem? The House and the Senate then have a control over the growth of the executive branch. Why don't you exercise it? I can't. I mean, it's there for you to exercise it. And oh, by the way, says Hamilton, who controls the budget? You in the House and Senate. So act like House and senators and control the budget and haul the president in it. Pass a War Powers Act and tell the president you can't do. And if the president, and act like senators, act like House members. And I think that is the problem. The president and the members of the House and Senate don't seem to need both. Look, this question is very good. So let me just say this one point. The other Hamilton defense, in addition to elections, budget, appointment, other Hamilton defense is going to be the executive does not have inherent powers. A monarch has inherent powers. The powers that the president has are stated in the Constitution. It is not inherent like a monarchy. So make the distinction between a president who is under constitutional oath and a monarch who's under no oath whatsoever. And I think that is the ultimate defense by Hamilton, that the president is not a monarch. And the old Whig, as you say, is correct, is that in many ways, the president has exercised inherent powers like a monarch would. And to go right to your point, the Senate and the House have done not a darn thing about it. They've let it happen, which means in the passage of time, it becomes constitutional. Constitution is not only what is written down, but what becomes known and accepted. And so now we accept executive orders. And obviously the Congress says, well, in emergencies, you can do this. But emergency powers are supposed to be in an emergency. And then only for a limited time. And if they're not for a limited time, then you are on the road to monarchy. But Hamilton's defense is only during the time of the emergency itself. And here is the emergency, and I spell it out, and I ask you for money to do the emergency. I can't do a darn thing about the emergency unless you give me the money. Who controls the troops? You say, oh, well, commander-in-chief. Look at Article 1, Section 8. Who organizes it? Who pays for it? Who does such and such? It's the Congress.
Okay, I just want to make sure Jordan has a chance, and then we have to make this kind of 2.5 minutes so Kathy gets her full 10 here. So lightning round answers. Any questions? Go ahead.
No problem.
Oh.
So I would just really like you to dive into a quote from Old Whig 5.
Okay.
He says, "I shall despair of any happiness in the United States until this office is either reduced to a lower pitch of power or made perpetual and hereditary."
Right.
So,
Right.
so he thinks that if it's the same amount of power, it must be hereditary. I just want you to kind of explain that a little bit, because it seems like there's a lot.
There is a lot, and we have 2.5 minutes. Here's the point. The Anti-Federalist argument is that the Constitution as it stands contains the potentiality for going towards an aristocracy in the Senate and a monarchy in the president. Old Whig here is talking about the potentiality of the way the Constitution is currently written, that it could go to monarchy. And so we're in no man's land right now. It's not clear that the president is really limited, and it's not clear that the president won't go to hereditary monarchy. So we're in the midstream, and I fear, says old Whig, that we're on the road to monarchy, because I don't see the checks and balances. Is that you get? So that, I mean, here's a formula which I think I mentioned in an earlier session, is that most of the Anti-Federalists weren't at the Constitutional Convention, so they weren't privy to the 88 days conversation. Some were, but this guy, old Whig, wasn't. So all the old Whig has is the Constitution in front of him. He doesn't know about the 88 days. He doesn't know how the clauses of the presidency came to be the clauses. So he's looking at it, and he's suspicious because he loves liberty, and he knows anytime things are, I mean, why do we write things down? We write things down so we don't have to be so suspicious and nervous, because now we know. But we can't write everything down. So as soon as we write something down, the next day we look at it and say, wait a minute, couldn't that person do this? Couldn't that person do that? Well, let's write it down. Let's write it down. So the old Whig is coming from the notion of we write things down to feel secure. And I look at this document, and that's all I have. I don't know anything of the rest. I have this document, and I look at those words, and I say, these contain the potentiality to make liberties insecure. Answer me, Hamilton, why I shouldn't feel insecure. I can feel insecure I can feel secure with a hereditary monarchy because I know exactly where I stand. I don't have anything unless the monarch says so. I can feel secure if everything is written down and there's no potentiality. So therefore I love state constitutions. This now is vague. It contains problems. And I'd like you to answer them. And Hamilton's answer is, grow up. You're an old Whig, but grow up. I can't write everything down. Civic responsibility is something, but why do you always think the worst is going to happen? And Hamilton's point is, I'm thinking of the best. I'm thinking of what we can do with power. And you're thinking, look at the dangers of power. Every time there's another power, God, I have to close the screen. I have to bring out the musket. I have to do such and such. And Hamilton is saying, goodness me, it's your own countrymen.
Okay, I want to make sure we go to Kathy, and she has her allotted time. I think we certainly see a lot of that today with, why do you make everything so negative? All right, go ahead, Kathy.
Well, thank you, Professor Lloyd. And we've got some great audience comments and questions that are coming in. First of all, Joyce McLean just says interesting with an exclamation point. So thank you, Joyce, for watching. And then Edward Gibbs asks, how much did Mr. Madison influence Mr. Hamilton?
Oh, I would say hardly anybody could influence Mr. Hamilton. And I don't think Mr. Madison's influence would last long. As soon as Madison left the New York, everything else was Hamilton, and you can see the vigor. Madison is prudent, so anytime you see Hamilton's writing in there, which tends to be prudent and on the one side and the other, that's Madison's influence. When you can see when Madison isn't there, Hamilton's mode of expressing things and being dismissive. Once you see Hamilton being dismissive, you know Madison's influence is there. And Madison, so I think the greatest influence that Madison had on Hamilton was during this period of time. And what is also interesting is that they put them out into 2 volumes. These Federalist papers were newspaper articles. So they bundled them together and they made them into 2 volumes. The first volume ends in Federalist 36. And most of that is Hamilton, and most of it is venom. And then you get a whole run from Madison up to through Federalist 51, no Hamilton involved. And you get prudence, this is what it's all about, this is what the convention did. And then Hamilton takes over. And so the Hamilton 2, after Madison has laid the groundwork from 37 to 51, is more prudent, less intemperate, more discursive about what the branches are supposed to be. In the beginning, from 1 through 36, where Hamilton dominates, it's sort of a nasty exchange, vituperation, and you don't get a lot of me. You can see how politics can be nasty. I think after Madison 36 through 51, you could see how more discursive Hamilton is. He's taking it more seriously.
Yeah, but I gotta say, Madison was pretty sneaky with Jefferson against Washington.
Well, we're talking this time.
But I don't want to take Kathy's time. Kathy, go back.
That's another session.
Yeah. Kathy, go ahead.
Well, and we just have a few more. PJ Leary says, wonderful application of Federalist ideas to today's federal government. Thank you, Professor. And we do thank you, Professor Lloyd. And then Teresa Speak says, I just love this presentation. I've always thought that the House should have 2 4-year terms and the Senate 2 6-year terms, since it does make the position more desirable. And since many of the House members do go on and run for Senate. So
you see what that proposition is doing is borrowing something from the Anti-Federalists and something from the Federalists. So what's borrowed from the Anti-Federalists is term limits, so that you don't become too interested in the job that you're not interested in us. What is borrowed from the Federalist is duration in office, so I can get something done and just don't have to run for election all the time. So it's something like that proposition. It would be a moderate way of handling what we might call the Federalist Anti-Federalist debate in the contemporary times. Yes, that would be learning from both sides and coming to some kind of moderate outcome.
Janine, I'll turn it back to you.
Wow. Well, my mind is just racing because I'm thinking, well, in the House, 2 years is not a lot of time, to get anything done. It wouldn't be interesting if the House was just say maybe 6 solid years, that's it, and the Senate was maybe 10 years, that's it, and then the president's maybe 6 years, that's it. I mean, I wouldn't have to worry about all this re-election stuff. So Jewel and Jordan, I just feel badly that you only got 2 questions instead of 1. Very, very quick last question, because
Janine, you're naughty. You're very naughty. You raise very interesting.
I know. But listen, I would talk to you forever.
And then you don't answer them. They're incredible questions. They're very pertinent. I'm about to come out and answer your question. You say, "Oh, I'm not going to listen to them."
That's only because I'm conscientious of Jewel and Jordan, Tova and Kathy. Otherwise, I would hog. Let them hog the entire thing. So we're over time, but Jewel and Jordan.
It's no trouble. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We
can keep going for an hour.
I think that any of our questions would require too long of an answer, and our audience might get a little antsy. So.
All right. Very good. Well, I guess we should wrap. Tova, Jewel, Jordan, Kathy, Professor Gordon Lloyd. To summarize, there's one last thing I want to say, which is interesting when you talk about the rights. Tova asked that question.
Yeah.
The conscious is really interesting, the right to conscience. Then you said the right of free speech. And then it was something else. I don't remember the third.
Due process, right to counsel.
Due process. But the fourth is really interesting to me, the right to choose your own government. And that goes back to John Locke, doesn't it? That's what John Locke talked about, that people come together and they're in the forest or wherever they are, and they come together in the olden days and they had the right to choose their own government. Wasn't that John Locke?
Yes, and it's anti-monarchy, because monarchy is the firstborn has the right to rule, regardless of whether the firstborn is sensible or not.
Yeah. So, but John Locke.
So that is a sort of how do you this question about how a ruler becomes a ruler is vital. The 2 Castros now are gone, right? So how do you so what mechanism is there to replace the Castros in Cuba? Well, now there's a quarrel going on, right? Monarchy solved that problem by saying the firstborn, and then it was the male, and now it's simply the firstborn. So we don't have a clash over who's going to rule. And what the American founding tried to say is, we've solved that problem. The people shall decide through annual elections, guaranteed. Notice that, because come rain, come shine, come war, come peace. every 2 years is an election and it's written in the Constitution. So it's not just, well, I'll postpone it because it's a little damp today or whatever. I mean,
Well, that's what a dictator would do. I don't
exactly.
think quite time.
Exactly. Who doesn't want to be replaced anyway?
Yeah.
But
Okay, well, thank you. I think we could talk forever, and I would talk to you forever for sure, but it's 3:05. But thank you, Professor Gordon Lloyd.
Thank you,
Thank you
all
so
of you,
much.
for your good questions and good questions and patience with me, because the questions are so good, and it's very difficult to answer because the questions are nuanced, and it's very difficult to just say A and then shut up, and B, shut
Well,
up.
no, we don't want
They're
that.
tied together, and everybody actually, you know, I'm glad they read the text, they read the old Whig, and now I think people understand with the audience what is a Whig and what is an old Whig. You know, where does the ambiguity of the name Federalist come from? I think we've settled that. For example, you're a Marxist. Well, that phrase, Marx didn't invent the idea that he was a Marxist, nor the followers. It was the anti-folks who invented the term. And so how you call people, what you name them, is often not of yourself doing, but of an opposition doing. And to call somebody anti is one of the more powerful rhetorical tools. So what is going on here is an argument based on, which includes rhetoric, because once you have elections, you're going to have rhetoric. And so the monarchy did away with that. You don't need rhetoric. You don't need persuasion. Firstborn is king. That's it, folks. But once you open elections, you open two things. One, a debate, and two, rhetoric for persuasion. So you'll notice both happening in America, and both happened then at the founding. And that's
Fabulous.
It's fabulous. And but thank you. See, look how long it took me to say thank you.
That's why we love you, Professor Gordon Lloyd. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Next time,
And
he'll be back. By popular
I just
demand.
want to say next Tuesday, August 10th, the separation of powers, Brutus 2 and Federalist 51. You can go on our website right now and click sign up. And if you click learn more on that episode, there's links to both papers. So you can start reading them right now and be ready for next week. Our guest next week is Christopher Burkett, the Associate Professor of Political Science and Director of the Ashbrook Scholar Program at Ashland University. So we look forward to next week. And thank you so much, Professor Lloyd, for all you're doing to help make this series possible.
Thank you, Kathy. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah.
I'm leaving. The two of you, well done. And you, well done. Everybody, well done. The blessings of liberty, the blessings of liberty upon you.
Oh, thank you. Except me. You think
Yeah.
I'm not, but that's okay. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.